Everybody, good morning, good morning. Can I just check with the AV team at the back that we've gone live? I've got a thumbs up from the back. Good morning, thank you for joining us. Welcome to this, the first of a series, Futures Afloat industry engagement event. My name is Ian Lower, the Deputy Master, as it's termed, of Trinity House, and in this context, the Chief Executive of the General Lighthouse Authority. My chair, Mr. Lance Batchelor, sends his apologies. I won't make you all jealous if I tell you where he is, so I'm not going to. But my chair, Mr. Lance Batchelor, sends his apologies that he cannot be with us today, but wishes us well and thanks you for your support with this endeavour. For those of us joining in London today, there's no planned fire alarms. If there is an incident, if there is a fire, I've got home team at the back. Follow them down through the stairs in which you came, and we'll gather outside. So I'm absolutely delighted to see so many people here in London and also online, from a range of organisations from right across the globe, showing so much interest in this, what I regard as a most exciting of opportunities. We've had over 150 registrations for this event, and we are so grateful for your participation and your time. And can I start by thanking all those who responded to our request for information, already helping us, and I think that's the real key theme of today, helping us to shape our procurement strategy. And more of that in a while. So some thank yous to start with. Thank you to SMI, the Society of Maritime Industry, as our partners and the organisers for today's event, Tom Chant, Helen Stevenson, Mark Albon and Katie Lafferty. Thank you also to Bramer, in particular, Ed Molyneux, Alistair Collins and Jay Parvin for coordinating the industry engagement and really for getting us to the place where we are today. Welcome to our colleagues and friends from the Commissioners of Irish Lights and the Northern Lighthouse Board. And of course, welcome to colleagues from our parent department, the Department of Transport, colleagues from the Department of Business and Trade, the Home Office, and the custodians for shipbuilding industrial strategy in the UK, the National Shipbuilding Office. Our ambition here at Trinity House is for the waters of England, Wales, the Channel Islands, and Gibraltar to be the safest to navigate anywhere in the world. We're a charity. We're dedicated to safeguarding shipping and seafarers, providing education, support and welfare to the seafaring community, and we hold a statutory duty as a General Lighthouse Authority with a mission to deliver a reliable, efficient and cost-effective aids to navigation service for the benefit and safety of all mariners. Now, by fulfilling our mission, we support our nation's prosperity, our nation's security, and we protect the marine environment. We keep the approaches to our ports open, and we keep trade flowing through the Dover Straits, one of the busiest maritime choke points in the world, at all times and in all conditions. Now, you can see that all very clearly laid out in the handouts on your seats, and those handouts relate the aids to navigation that we operate and maintain to the UK's most significant ports and the highest risk maritime areas, the busiest and the most congested areas off the UK's coast. And I don't need to tell anyone here or online that within just a few hours of disruption at a port or in the Dover Straits, that'll result pretty quickly in empty shelves in supermarkets. Now, of course, here, and those that are in London and sitting in this building, you kind of can't miss it. We're proud of our heritage, which goes back over 500 years. Henry VIII signed the original charter for Trinity House, and we're proud of our history. And we're proud of Trinity House's accomplishments. Our story is one of innovation, adaptation and adoption of technology. It's what makes us unique, and in so many ways, why we stand out. And while our history is important to us, so too is the future. And let me just give you a quick sense of the context within which these new ships, our new vessels, will operate. In the lifetime of these new vessels, the maritime world is going to change. The blue economy will drive a shared and changing sea space, increasing congestion and reducing navigation space. The future mariner too is going to change. More numerous, many of lesser experience, operating on a greater breadth of vessels. Strained international relations and increased political instability will likely change traffic patterns. And then there's the all-pervasive impact of a changing climate. We'll be needing to cope with increased data, and that'll drive dependence upon comms and bandwidth. Resilience is going to be a challenge. So what? Well, the needs for what we do, for our mission, for aids to navigation will endure, but the mix is going to change. Data's going to be king. You don't need me to tell you that the future is one of more people dependent upon more data. Cost effectiveness and efficiency will be paramount. Access to our sites, our stations will be more challenging. There will be a need for closer strategic partnerships and cooperation. Through all this change and challenge and opportunity, we will need to continue to ensure that all mariners, in whatever type of vessel they sail, and all other users of our waters have the utmost trust and confidence in the navigation and safety service that we provide. And here, of course, this is where our colleagues and our partners in industry come in. In the future, we're going to operate a new, innovative mix of physical and virtual aids to navigation, ashore and afloat, adapted for a changing climate, optimized for the future mariner, and part of a wider, secure, remotely reconfigurable, monitored and robustly authenticated system. Our strategy is for aids to navigation to evolve within a wider digital architecture, meaning their use will be more central to a wide range of at-sea activities, requiring ever more data transfer. And changing data standards means Trinity House, along with our partners in the other general lighthouse authorities, will need to be trusted in managing, fusing, analysing and sharing massive amounts of it. We're going to operate novel, high-tech, standardised, what we're calling smart buoys that will be integrated, remotely reconfigurable and fully adapted for a changing climate. Smart buoys that will remain in the water for 10 years. Flexible, highly reliable, lean-crewed, modern vessels are going to help us mitigate our impact on the environment by emitting significantly lower carbon emissions than today. Vessels that will enable even greater capacity to meet our statutory requirement, and will continue to be an influential, authoritative expert voice through thought leadership, partnering, advisory roles. We're going to continue to participate in IALA to drive harmonisation in international standards. And building upon our deep understanding of the operating environment, the users and the technology gives Trinity House and the other general lighthouse authorities a unique position from which to help shape the future regulatory and policy environment. And in so many ways, the most important piece of the jigsaw is that we'll continue to be a values-led, match-fit organisation with people who want to join us, grow with us, and advocate for us. So that's the context. And a key part of getting to that future is Futures Afloat, our game-changing programme to replace our two multifunction buoy handling tenders, vessels that are fundamental to our mission. Our vision for the programme, Futures Afloat, is an entirely new programme, and I can't stress that enough, that looks beyond the critical need to replace Trinity House's ships. It also drives wider benefits through the recruitment of highly skilled cadets and apprenticeships. Futures Afloat will upskill all those who work on and with these new ships, which will contain the most modern technology. We're going to significantly reduce our carbon footprint with these new ships from the moment they enter service. They must be capable of adaptation to new fuels. We'll be investing in small and medium-sized enterprises, and it's good to see so many of those here today. We'll be investing in those small and medium-sized enterprises in the UK that will support the ongoing operation of these vessels. What's the mission for Futures Afloat? Put simply, replace our ships. Futures Afloat will put in place arrangements that will replace THV, Trinity House vessel Patricia, as a priority, and subsequently Trinity House vessel Galatea. It will also consider the replacement of Trinity House vessel Alert at a later date. It will drive a strong competition through a pipeline of shipbuilding activity that will also refer to other ship replacement activity happening in the wider General Lighthouse Authority community. So over the next couple of hours, you'll hear from the Futures Afloat project team about our plans to replace both the Patricia and the Galatea. I'm sure you will agree with us that two ships built to a common design present a great many opportunities, and we'll talk more about that later. And as the largest sponsor of cadets in the UK, 10% of all cadets in the UK are sponsored by Trinity House, you will also hear from some of the cadets we sponsor. James, Ella, you're very welcome, as to why what you can do for us is so important to Ella and James. I'm also pleased to say that we have members of the Marine Operations team here today, the crew across the back there, and they're available for digging into some of that technical detail in the networking event on completion. You'll hear from the programme's senior responsible owner, Damien Oliver, about where this programme sits among wider priorities in government and the changes we have made to our overall approach to replacing ships, with more details around the requirements contained within the tender we plan to issue later this year. Finally, the programme manager, Neil Grant, will set out the broad process we will follow. Neil will set out how you will be able to access draft tender material, including a draft contract and requirements document. You'll then be invited to comment on those documents without prejudice to any tender you submit. Neil will also set out future opportunities, including details of a boot camp, which we plan to launch after the summer break to help guide you through the bidding process prior to the tender launch. All of this engagement is designed with three objectives in mind: transparency in what we are doing every step of the way, collaboration, which drives better outcomes for everyone, and clarity about what we are asking from you. At the end of the presentations today, we'll be holding a short Q&A panel with key members of the team, and I'll explain how that will work for our online audience, who will be able to submit questions at the end of the presentations. And finally, for those in the room, there will be an opportunity to network and look around the building at the end of today's event. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Damien, over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning, everyone. I'm Damien Oliver, the Major Projects Director here at Trinity House. It's a huge privilege to be speaking to everyone in the room and to all of those online, and thank you for coming today. It really means a lot. Later in today's presentation, I'll talk a bit more about what myself and Neil and the new team we've established here in Trinity House brings to this endeavour that Ian has set out, and what we're doing to strengthen our proposition to all of you. But I want to go back to the slide that Ian talked to just a moment ago to provide a bit more kind of background and context on what we do. So as you can see on the handout and on the screen, we maintain 450 buoys and expect more than 11,000 of those same aids to navigation for ports, harbours and the offshore industry. Trinity House typically deploys two types of buoy, but the one that's probably the one we do more of in this particular GLA, General Lighthouse Authority, is the larger Type 1 buoys, which are over 15 metres high and weigh 10 tonnes. So they're quite substantial pieces of kit that need to be accommodated on our ships. Our buoys themselves are maintained at our main buoy yard close to the home berths for Patricia and Galatea in Harwich, with a further facility in Swansea. Now, of course, we're also very proud of our world-famous lighthouses, which just happen to be, in most cases, situated in also the most equally stunning locations. I think that's more coincidence than it is planning. And these are still, to this day, vital aids to navigation for mariners. And keeping those lighthouses, particularly those that are offshore rock lighthouses, maintained is one of the functions of our ships. We maintain over 60 lighthouses around England, Wales, the Channel Islands and Gibraltar. Of course, as you all know, I'm sure, that our lighthouses themselves are now all automated, the last one being automated in 1998 in Northumberland in Kent. So they're all coordinated, they're all managed along with our 7 light vessels from an operations centre in Harwich, which is staffed 24/7, 365 days a year. And to add to that, we also have a tri-GLA helicopter contract, which operates for Trinity House out of a base in St Just in Cornwall. I make all of these points because all of these pieces of the jigsaw, if you like, are supported and indeed underpinned by the work of our ships and the ships' companies. And so it's really important to get that context when you're thinking about how best to serve Trinity House's requirements. We're a relatively small organisation, just shy of 300 people. That number was much higher back in the day, and so we have to be very careful about how we deploy those resources to get the best possible value for money for the light due payer. And of course, with that in mind, for those who don't know, Trinity House does not draw from the taxpayer, the UK taxpayer. It is funded through light dues for a hypothecated tax, so we don't draw down from the Exchequer. Our position in terms of where we sit alongside the other GLAs, the General Lighthouse Authorities, is that we're a non-departmental public body. What does that mean? Effectively, we're an arm's length body of the Department for Transport. But the Department for Transport are our sponsors. And so we must always make sure that we keep colleagues, and I know there are some colleagues from the DFT here today, in touch with everything that we're doing and agree with everything that we are seeking to achieve. And it's great also to see the National Shipbuilding Office here today, who are working very closely with us to help design the approach that we're taking to secure our new ships. Now, of course, the reasons we're here today is to talk about replacing our 2 ships, as Ian has pointed out. Patricia is a beautiful ship, much loved by everyone who has and has had worked on this ship since she was built in 1982. Since that time, she's amassed countless sea time and delivered vital services to protect the mariner. We are so proud of that ship and all that it's done, and the companies that have operated on board that ship, and all of the people that support it and keep it in operation. A challenge which is becoming even more acute as, sadly, Patricia becomes older. Now, Galatea was built, so Galatea is on the left-hand side of your screen, was built in 2007 and is the sister ship to the Pharos, operated by the Northern Lighthouse Board. And both of these ships are absolutely central to the role that Ian set out earlier for Trinity House in the way that I've also described. Our ship's main purpose is buoy handling, primarily to satisfy our statutory duties as set out in law, both domestic and international. But you might also like to know that Trinity House generates significant commercial revenue based on the buoy handling work it does under contract to commercial companies, most notably the offshore energy industry. And that's really important for us because that income helps pay for many of the things that we're trying to do here in Trinity House. And so having serviceable ships that can manage and deploy the most buoys is really, really key. But they're called multi-function buoy handling tenders for a reason, right? So they do lots of other things besides. So our ships are also engaged with hazard marking, guard duty, civil hydrography, the list goes on. This versatility can sometimes be difficult to articulate in a requirements document. So help us with that, if you would. Help us understand how we can best bring all of that together. We really do want to work with you on that. The ships themselves also, their area of operation also happens to include, as Ian has said, the high-risk shipping areas in the UK. So they also need to respond quickly. They need to be able to remain at anchor and be comfortable places for which people can live and operate. And as Ian has said, shipping becomes more congested, shipping lanes become more congested as a result of offshore developments and for other reasons besides. This becomes a more and more pressing issue. Now, I've been on board Patricia a number of times since my short time here at Trinity House, and I've always been really impressed by what I've seen and the people I've spoken to. But it's fair to say that keeping Patricia going is a challenge. And while the Galatea was built in 2007, it was built in a more digital era. And as we know, when we rely more on ones and zeros rather than nuts and bolts, it can become more vulnerable. Those sorts of things can become more vulnerable to time. And of course, with the Galatea, we never want to be in the place as we are right now with Patricia, which is operating well beyond its expected economic life. So that leads me on to my next slide. And I really want to point out these three factors which are the most important when it comes to thinking about what we're trying to achieve here. Patricia, as I said, has far exceeded its expected economic serviceable life. By the time we come to replace Galatea, that will have achieved that same milestone. The availability challenges that we're experiencing, to be candid, are becoming more and more acute. And it's simply not sustainable to operate in that way for all sorts of reasons I think you can probably gather based on what I've talked about already. And a review that was conducted, sponsored by the Department for Transport only a few years ago, concluded that these ships will remain a requirement for years to come. So there's no question as far as the strategic case when it comes to replacing these ships, there's no question as to the validity of that case. Now, of course, one of the other things that's really important to us, in fact, the most important thing to us is our people. And what I didn't want to do today was to have a really quite stuffy conversation around procurement process. I felt that there was another dimension to this that we really need to bring in, and that's our people. And so right now I'd like to hand over to Nigel Hope, who's going to talk about our cadet training scheme and introduce our cadets themselves. And I'll be back shortly after to talk more about what next. So, Nigel.
Good morning. My name is Nigel Hope. I'm the Director of Maritime Training, and it's my responsibility to look after these guys, HR train. So what I'd like to say is that, Trinity House, like many other ship owners, require new builds to replace existing aging fleets. These ships need to be high-tech to meet the modern operational requirements, run on cleaner fuels, minimize environmental impact, and operation capable and able to operate safely. Operation safely can only be achieved with well-trained crews who can meet the ever-challenging demands of the changing maritime sector, and at the same time ensuring the vessel is safely managed, taking cognizance of the operation requirements to which the ship was designed to undertake. The offshore crews then have to be supported by onshore management and leaders defining strategies, projects, forecasts, operational assistance, and promoting strong safety culture with the vessel crew, all of which requires a higher caliber candidates to be recruited and trained to fulfill critical positions. Trinity House endeavours to support recruitment of suitable candidates through its Merchant Navy Scholarship Scheme, MNS. A leader in cadet training, training deck, engine and ETO cadets to become officers in the Merchant Navy. All Trinity House cadets follow a 3-year programme over 5 years, placed on either a HND, foundation or full honours degree route, and qualify as Officer Watch Unlimited. In addition, under the previous government's initiative to support Ukrainian refugees, the DFT selected Trinity House to train 20 Ukrainian cadets, following one of the above programmes, fully funded by the DFT. Currently, we have 3 at Glasgow City College, 1 at Solent University. Another 8 has been identified for starting in September 24, and another 8 has to be recruited for January 25. Once qualified, the majority follow a career path within the maritime sector, either remaining in the sea and becoming the future masters, chief engineers or senior ETOs. Alternatively, following careers to support the maritime sector, superintendency, managers, shipbuilding, maritime lawyers, and it's important to use this experience for any operational new build programme. Trinity House itself benefit from the MNS, having officers and managers working for the Lighthouse Board who were previously Trinity House cadets. I believe one of the key advantages of Trinity House Merchant Navy Scholarship Scheme is that the cadets can gain experience on different types of vessels through the close relationship Trinity has with many shipping companies who offer well-trained training berths. For example, British Antarctic Survey, we've got 2 berths on the Sir David Attenborough. Sea Peak, very modern LNG carrier company. Carnival, Shell, Swire Shipping, to name a few. We even have 1 berth on an RN ship, HMS Tamar, who's working out in the Pacific. And several of our cadets have been on this ship and found great training opportunities and a different dimension to a career at sea. All of which gives each cadet an appreciation of the whole maritime sector, including being engaged in dry dock programs and alike. Future cadets and officers are looking for modern, high-tech, cleaner vessels to sail on. That's their future. That's what they want. Today, I've invited 2 Trinity House cadets to give an overview of their career in maritime, their experience and their expectations for the future. Therefore, I would like to first invite Ella Gamble, Phase 5 cadet studying at Solent University on the honour degree route to the lectern. Now waiting in oral state, and I believe, Ella, you've just submitted your dissertation. So I'd like you to come to the matter.
Good morning. My name is Ella Gamble, and I'm a deck officer cadet sponsored by Trinity House who's doing the full honours degree route at Wasatch Maritime School and Solent University. Nigel asked me to come here today to tell you all why Trinity House is so important to me and all of my fellow cadets who Trinity House sponsor. So I chose a career at sea because I wanted something different, I wanted a challenge. I also know the maritime industry as a whole offers so many careers at sea, ashore, in management, and other jobs like most of you here have. I also wanted to follow in family footsteps, and I knew this job would see me a lifetime career. So I chose Trinity House because it has a long-standing history and has always been at the front of the UK's maritime interests, as well as its connections, which have allowed me to have such a varied sea time during my training. Some of those ships that I've been on have allowed me to have different experiences and gain different knowledge to some of my peers back at my maritime school. Trinity House are also really dedicated to providing high quality training for all of their cadets, which unfortunately not all shipping companies provide for their cadets. By Trinity House ensuring that we have high quality training, it means that the industry and the maritime sector in the UK is going to have high quality seafarers later on as well. So my experiences so far, as I said earlier, have been really varied, enjoyable and extremely beneficial for my training. I've had opportunities to sail on a variety of types of ships, including Trinity House's own vessels, Patricia and Galatea. I've also benefited from Trinity House's links and partnership with the Royal Navy, where I got to have a different view of the maritime industry and experience and gain knowledge from the UK's Royal Navy, and also give them a bit of a view on the Merchant Navy and what we do. So with the UK's interest in highly trained cadets, I've also been able to be on ships with Carnival Corporation. I've also been on the complete other scale where I've been back on tall ships. So I really do have a varied career so far, which Trinity House has provided me. I've also been able to be involved in a wider range of events and interactions like today, where I can interact with industry specialists and give my voice and opinion for the newest generation of seafarers, because the ships you are building will be, hopefully, for my career. The experiences on Galatea meant that I've been able to experience a higher tech, modern vessel than compared to Patricia. So my future ambitions, I hope that soon I'll be joining the ranks of the British Merchant Navy and have a long, varied career. Hopefully the ships become better, even better, and have things that are going to attract the newest generation. As a new generation, we have different expectations. We've grown up in a world where there's been digital advancements, that's all we know. So these ships need to be built for my generation. I also know that my degree and the extra experience that I'm gaining in the industry will help me further on and help the industry further on when seafarers like myself come ashore into these management roles, that we understand the seafaring industry itself. So the future of Trinity House affects the future of the British Merchant Navy, and these ships affect the future of being able to attract and retain the next generation of seafarers. Trinity House has always been invested in the involvement and practices and progression of the industry, and I'm glad that I've been able to experience those whilst being on Trinity House vessels, from maintaining century-old lighthouses to watching the newest bits of kit be developed, surveying wrecks and things like that that are so important to the UK, which no other shipping company does for the UK. So, thank you. I think James is now going to come and speak about why Trinity House is so important to him.
Thank you, Ella. I hope that gives you a perspective for the future of what we require with our offshore crews and officers and cadets of the Merchant Navy. I'd now like to invite James Snelson, a Phase 5 student, just graduated last month at Fleetwood Nautical College with a foundation degree. Going now to top up your foundation degree under the Swire Fund. Sir Adrian Swire was a previous elder brother at Trinity House, dedicated a sum of money for cadets to top up to a full honours degree from foundation if they so wished. And James is taking that on. So I now invite him to lectern to give his views on the future.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm based out in Fleetwood Nautical Campus. So originally, I actually went off to university and I decided that it wasn't for me. It didn't enrich me or give me what I wanted out of a career nor education. So I went off and looked somewhere else. It was when the Merchant Navy was suggested to me, and I did some research. I found Trinity House to be the best option for me. They had the opportunity to put me on multiple vessels across the maritime industry and enrich me with as much experience as possible, which is what I was after. This cadetship would give me more practical skills as well as academic skills. On Patricia, I spent a short time. However, it was a great stepping stone for getting me used to life and work on board in the Merchant Navy. I then spent 4 months on HMS Tamar with the Merchant Navy Royal Navy Exchange. It was a brilliant experience which gave me a lot of time to spend on the bridge and spend a lot of time with the new technologies that were coming forth. Then, a sector that I'm most interested in, the oil and gas, I was offered a position on board Shell ships, one on their oil fleet, the Silver, and one on their QMAX LNG ships. The LNG ships are very new integrated bridge systems. Trinity House has supported me throughout, delivering exemplary experience to enrich me and my future career within the maritime industry. And the future, as with the fund provided by Trinity House, allows me to carry on and do the top-up degree in maritime operations management, which focuses on the future of the maritime industry, which is greener, safer, and more technological shipping. Thank you very much.
greatest trick is not falling up the stairs when you come back on stage. You can see at the top there a much used expression, our people are our greatest asset. That's true, and you've just heard that, and we really wanted to bring that to life today as part of this first round of engagement, that actually what we're seeking here, yes, is 2 new ships over the course of time, but ships that meet the expectations of those who will operate on them and with them. Expectations are different now to what they might have been when Patricia was built, although Patricia was built certainly with comfort in mind. It's fair to say that we need to match those expectations, not just now, but well into the future, if we're to attract high-quality, high-skilled people. And you can see there on the slide, high-tech ships crewed by highly competent people. We invest in their training. We invest in their future. You've heard from Nigel, Trinity House being the leading cadet training sponsor in the UK, 10% of all cadets sponsored by Trinity House. But it's also identifying tomorrow's maritime leaders. I think you've just met 2 of them. In fact, I know you have. So keep that in mind at all times when we're talking about some really quite important but sometimes quite impersonal details around contracts and KPIs and project schedules and all of those sorts of things. Really important, but sometimes we can lose the end prize here, which is 2 ships built to high standards of comfort, safety, and capability. So I'm going to now look ahead. Having set the context and what the organisation is about, I want to now look to the future. I came to Trinity House after, if I might say so myself, a reasonably successful career in the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. I'm seeing smiles on the front row. For over 23 years I worked in that organisation, and in that time I managed to secure £4 billion from the Treasury in investing in frontline emergency response capabilities, and the other person who should be celebrated for that effort is Neil Grant, who has also joined me from the MCA. And that money went on delivering frontline emergency response capabilities in the form of brand new cutting-edge Coast Guard helicopters, planes and ships. And as a result of our efforts, the MCA is now the largest operator of aircraft in the public sector outside of the military. And it's also the most, and don't take my word for it, this is what others have said, the most successful example of a commercially led procurement in government in recent times. So we have a bit of pedigree here about making this a success. And I just wanted you to know that we bring the pair of us and the other people that we are building into the team right now are well used to navigating these sorts of things through the government machine. And that's exactly what we'll have to do here, because we are in the end drawing on public money, like dues, to fund these ships. The contracts that deliver the capability that we're here to talk about today, the success of those things start in a room like this, with people who really want to engage, really want to collaborate, really want to support us, and not just in this physical room, but of course in this virtual room. And nobody in Trinity House, myself included, has the monopoly on wisdom when it comes to procuring, in this case, 2 ships. We rely on you to tell us what's working well and what's not working so well. I'm determined to make this competition as open and as inclusive as possible. As Ian has already said, our 3 key goals here: transparency. You'll always know where we are in time and space. You'll always know what we're up to. And I hope it will get to the point where actually you say, too much information, we don't need to know all of this. If we've done that, then we're off and running. Collaboration, exactly what we're doing here right now, all the way through to the point at which a contract is signed. And clarity, being really clear about what we're asking of you so that you can help us deliver the capabilities that we need. That's at the heart of the engagement strategy that we are starting today. So this is just the beginning. One of the things that we've done, and for those with long memories, will remember Trinity House previous procurement approach, And one of the things that myself, I can't really take the credit for this, Andy Holt, who can't be here today, who's the Director of Operations, has a very strong commercial shipping background, so just know that, number one. And number two, he took a very, very forensic look at the requirements that we put forward at the last tender process. And what he felt was that we had a set of requirements that were quite complex in how they were structured. And what we've done since then is to disaggregate that complexity. So we will have a very clear concept of operation. We will have a very clear set of requirements. We will have a very clear view on design. We will have a very clear contract. And all of that will be the efforts, not just of the people in Trinity House, but all of you assisting us along the way. And one of the other things that we did was to look at the requirements themselves and ask our colleagues in the the other general lighthouse authorities to help us by challenging some of the assumptions that we'd made previously in previous tenders. So I'm grateful to the Northern Lighthouse Board and Irish Lights for working with us to basically create a sense of challenge around what we're asking for and a sense of consistency about what we're asking for across the 4 multifunction buoy handling tenders that will eventually all have to be replaced. And if I just pick out some of the key things that are different and some of the things that are worth noting. So first of all, note, if you haven't already, that the draft requirement for our new ships reflects the areas of operation in which we are responsible. And so that's something that is a practical limitation in that regard. Things that have changed, propulsion to azimuths rather than what we were asking for before. The numbers of people on board we've reduced to be more manageable. So all of these reflect, I think, much better sort of commercially understood practice rather than something that's too overly bespoke. There's a lot of bespoke elements to our new ships. We want to try and make that as less complicated as possible. Maximum speed reflects our emergency response requirement. The most significant change, though, I would highlight, since maybe the last you saw a tender from Trinity House, is the position of the working deck, which is now going to be aft of the ship. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to handle as many buoys as we can, for the reasons we set out earlier, to satisfy our statutory duty, but also to generate that commercial income. So we want to be able to handle up to 17 of those, 2 of which will be Type 1 buoys, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. So keep that in mind when thinking about what you're delivering for us. 28 days of endurance, which reflects our concept of operation. Now, I've put MEF in already, but what I'm essentially saying is that these ships need to be able to be converted at some future stage to be able to accommodate new fuels as they become more commercially available. So those are the really key differences in terms of the design of the ships that we're seeking to procure. Lots of other differences which I could go into, but we won't just right now. There'll be plenty of opportunity to do that at a later stage. And you'll, of course, see all of this material in draft. The other thing that's changed significantly for us here at Trinity House is the people and the way in which we're delivering the governance for Futures Afloat. So I've talked about my arrival here back in February, Neil Grant, who joined a month or so later, and we're building a really solid team here at Trinity House who are going to deliver this capability for this organisation, working with all of you. It's a different way to what we've done in the past. This is a dedicated team for the task, working full-time on delivering these new ships. We have commercial shipping expertise in the form of Andy Holt, who's got a long career prior to coming to Trinity House in delivering new ships in the commercial space. That's really important for everyone to know, because that kind of experience, A, is quite hard to come by, so we're very lucky to have Andy, but also it complements the dimension that Neil and myself bring from the point of view of being able to work with government. And we do have a lot of support from colleagues across government. We've got colleagues from the Department for Transport here today, from the National Shipbuilding Office, and Business and Trade, and that just reflects the huge support that we enjoy from central government to get this right. We're supported by highly experienced advisors, some of whom are in the room as well today. Braemar Shipping acting as our broker SMI supporting us on events like this today, but also really high-quality lawyers and technical advisors in the form of Dean from Longitude, who's our naval architect company supporting us, a design company supporting us on the design aspects of these ships, and KPMG supporting us on the money and all of those lovely things. And I promise we'll not hide behind any of those advisors. You will deal with myself or Neil, first of all, and the advisors. As they say in government, advisors advise, politicians decide. In this case, advisors advise, the SRO decides. So just know that, and that's the approach that we will be taking. And then the commercial approach is very different. I can't articulate in any great detail what that looks like right now because it's too nascent. But what we do know is what we do need to do differently to what we did before. So we have conducted a root and branch review of the draft tender documentation, including the contract. We have a form of contract that's almost finished and ready in draft to be shared with all of you at the right moment. And we've also been working on all of the other things that we learned from previous tenders on this very topic. Barriers to market entry, that's the thing that's changing the most. We want to remove those barriers to market entry. We want as many of you through this competition as we possibly can once we launch it. And it's for you to tell us, oh, that's not going to work. That's just not going to work for us. And don't be shy in telling us that. I'd rather you told us so that we could make a change and make a pivot than find out when it's too late, when we come to launch the tender and nobody bids. So that's a really important change I want to point out. All of this draft procurement documentation will be issued to you in draft at the right time. We're just working on the logistics of that as to how we do that. Probably going to set up we'll be setting up a data room, which you'll be invited to access and pull down those documents as we go through. And then, of course, as been mentioned by Ian, we'll have a procurement boot camp at the right moment, and we're going to enlist support from colleagues across government to help us facilitate that. I think it's really important for everybody in the room and everybody online, particularly for those from around the world, to know how to kind of navigate this sometimes quite, can appear at least a slightly arcane process. It's really important that we work together with you to make sure you're match fit when it comes to that contract notice being released. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that kind of gives you some reassurance that so far as design, the people and the governance and the commercial approach that we're taking is different. And as we go through this engagement process, you'll hear more and more about that. I can reassure you of that. You will never be in any doubt, I should say, as to what we're getting up to. So with that, I'll hand to Neil Grant right now. He's going to talk about the mechanics of the procurement itself, what we can expect, down to the sort of process level. So Neil, over to you.
Yes, my name's up there, so I'll start. Good morning, everyone. I'm Neil Grant. I'm the Programme Manager for the Futures Afloat programme, which, as you'll have heard, is a key programme for Trinity House. So, what do I want to do today? Today I want to give you a brief overview of the overall timeline for the programme. I also want to give you a high-level breakdown of the key stages of the programme, so you can understand what is happening at each stage as the programme progresses through its life cycle. And I think that's very key, and I want to give you an open and transparent approach on how we'll do that and what the next stages are. So, when we look at the programme and timelines, we've divided it into three key phases. There is the development and approval phase, which we're currently in, and which Damien has touched on, followed by the procurement phase, and then the contract award and mobilisation phase. And over the next few slides, I will put some context around these phases. Please do note when I'm talking, though, that timelines are currently indicative, as you'd expect, and are potentially subject to change because we're going through that process now of understanding where we are and what the timelines look like. So please bear that in mind. So, looking at the first timeline, we're currently in the development approval phase. For a programme of this complexity, we would normally expect this to take around 9 to 12 months in total. Following this phase, we'd move into the procurement phase. Again, for a programme of this type, we'd be looking at a period of around 18 months for the procurement phase itself. Once awarded and signed, we would then work with the winning tender on the mobilisation, build and delivery phase. I'm afraid it's too early to put exact timelines on obviously the mobilisation and delivery phase, because obviously that's up to which tenders and which bidder wins that particular competition. So that will work with you to understand that. But what I would say as part of this, as part of our market engagement, we do want to understand, based on a 2-vessel tender, what the potential build time like and delivery timeline looks like, so we can plan that in and give that due attention. So as I said, I want to provide a bit more detail on what happens at these 3 key phases. So we're currently in the development approval phase, but what does that mean? Well, we're currently undertaking work on developing our concept of operations, as Damien said, to give you an understanding of what the vessels and our crews do and how they operate. Alongside this, we are developing our requirements in terms of the technical aspects, the financial aspects, and other key elements. Alongside this, we're developing the contract, which I think Damien touched on. And thanks to the great feedback we've received from yourselves at the request for information, this has greatly helped us in developing that contract, along with other key areas which you responded to as part of that request for information process. So again, thank you for engaging with us on that. We will continue further market engagement, and this will be in the form of many events, boot camp being one of them. But as Damien said, we'd look to release as much information as we can and is possible to gather your views and gain your vital feedback on this key procurement for us. So I am keen, as is the team, to get that information from yourselves. It'll help us understand and develop that procurement pack as we move forwards. And as with any major investment programme, we have to go through a business case process, through HM government, and seek their approval to proceed to the next phase. And that next phase being the procurement. Once we've got those necessary approvals, we will launch a formal notice. After this formal notice, we will go through what we call, currently it's called the selection questionnaire phase. That will change under the Procurement Act through an initial selection phase. Those who pass this phase will then be invited to submit a formal tender. So what I would say is this documentation, this initial selection phase, we will again give this out in draft, give everyone the ability to give their comments and views on that to make sure that we are able to get good, high quality tenders and bids through that process. That's what we're keen to do. Moving on to the formal tender, what we currently call the invitation to tender, we would expect as part of this, we'd want to have a form of negotiations as part of that tender process. So this is built into that timeline. So we will receive the initial tender, we will evaluate that as part of that process, and then we'd expect to have a form of negotiations with yourselves on your responses. Following that negotiation and tender phase, we'd then invite bidders to submit the final tender following the conclusion of the negotiations. This will then be evaluated as part of the award criteria. Again, we will set out how we are going to award this contract. So again, that will be clearly set out as part of that procurement process. And that will determine the winning tender. Following the final tender evaluation outcome, a business case will be developed to support the outcome of the procurement exercise and the winning tender. Again, this case will go through various internal and external approval boards to ensure the decision is the correct one. And we will seek HM Government's approval to award and sign the contract as part of that process. The mobilisation phase will then commence in preparation for the start of construction of the vessels and delivery of the vessels. I think that is it from me. That is the overall timeline. I've done it in months, so I hope that helps to give you an understanding of where we are in the stages and what process we're undertaking. So thank you for listening. I'll now hand back to Ian.
Okay, thank you, Neil. As Neil says, our commitment's to remain in touch with you all through every step of this journey. Damien wants to say it. I want to say it as well. I want you to be able to say to us, hang on, enough, Trinity House, enough of the updates, rather than wondering what we're up to. It's all about communications. Can I thank you, James? Can I thank you, Ella, for making the time to be here today and giving us a sense of your hopes and ambitions for the future. And I hope you can draw the connection between what James and Ella are talking about and the programme that we're embarked upon. So it's time for the panel. Really keen to hear from you in the room, and also from those joining us online. I'll shortly get the panel up on stage and ask them to introduce themselves. But before I do so, let me set out how this will work. Those of you in the room with a question only need simply to raise your hand. I'll ask you to speak. Quite up to you whether you say who you are and where you're from. Completely up to you. Those of you online can use the Teams chat window to submit a question. Neil will be on the stage with us. He'll have a laptop in front of him, and he'll occasionally raise his hand and then introduce questions from those of you online. And at the end of the event, we'll collect in all the questions. We'll publish the questions and our answers online, so don't worry if we don't get time to get to your questions. The Futures Afloat email address, the Futures Afloat email address is futuresafloat@trinityhouse.co.uk. Will remain open to questions from now until we enter the formal tender process. We'll publish weekly updates to the Q&A on our Futures Afloat website, details of which will follow. So, panel, come and join me. I'll take a seat at the...
Try not to fall down the back.
The stage here doesn't go all the way to the back, so we're just in a bit of a health and safety briefing to make sure we don't end up. Natalie, over to you. Just introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here today, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel.
Pleasure.
I'm really excited to be part of the exec team I'm working with Damien and Neil, who are leading on this project. You've heard from Ella and James and Nigel earlier on about the importance of attraction and retention in the future and building careers in maritime, and that is very definitely part of the theme that you would have heard loudly today, I hope. One of the other things I wanted to add is for the people that we currently employ, this provides a real opportunity for them to get involved in the design. And in particular, if we think about better working lives and improvement in working and living spaces, I think that will be a really important part. We've touched upon technology as well, and the development of new skills. And I think that's a key aspect of our people strategy in terms of attraction and retention in our organisation. One final thing I think for me to say is that I recently attended a Worcester event, and it was really good to hear from the people who attended, and in particular there were three cadets who were able to talk and share their experiences. And I think this is also, therefore, a brilliant opportunity to continue to inspire women into maritime careers. Thank you.
Thanks. Worcester are the Women in Shipping and Transport Association. They're a real leading voice in ensuring that we have the right skill set, the right people, the right approach. And actually, I think when I was at the same event, I was sitting there listening to that and thinking, do you know what? These new ships are going to give us the best opportunity to make Trinity House the best place to serve at sea for a young woman. And that can't be said right across the sector, can it? it just can't. So there's a real opportunity for Trinity House and for us in this room and online to make that a reality. So really exciting, actually. Damien, have you said enough, or do you want to say
I think people are probably fed up with hearing them.
Quite right.
So.
Beth.
Hello, I'm Beth Briggs, and I'm happy as well to be working on this project with this team and with the Department for Transport to ensure compliance as we go through the procurement process. We also have a team of a procurement team in our Harwich office who are excited to sort of keep a visual view on this procurement, particularly as there's great learning opportunities for them, and it'll be exciting as we go through.
Thanks, Beth.
Very much.
Thank you. Neil?
Yep, you introduced yourself already. Neil Grant, but a bit of background on me. I'm a project delivery professional working alongside Damien. I've been a senior responsible on the programme director across various different projects and programmes, from delivering alongside Damien aviation assets plus emergency towing vessels for the MCA as well. So.
And we would have also thanks, Neil. We would have also invited Andy Holt. Damien mentioned him, our new chief operating officer with a real commercial background. So complementing the public sector experience you see both in Damien and Neil and Beth from a procurement side, and adding in that commercial element, which I think, of course, is so important. Okay, over to you, Ken. You're smiling at me. Excellent. I didn't have a question written down. I was thinking if nobody puts their hand up, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, and thank you very much to your team for portraying what is a very exciting project and for introducing it to us. I am Ken Holberg, the CEO of OSEA UK Shipbuilding, and obviously very interested in this project. Could you give us a little bit of an idea of the budget, the finance that you've got, where the finance is coming from? Do you need finance? And could you explain, because I don't quite get it, why the British government needs to give approval to your project if you're privately funded?
Yes, so I'll take the second part of that. Circa 2012, you're right, the money comes in from private sources through light dues from the shipping sector, and around 2012, the Treasury made a decision that this would be a hypothecated tax come through the Treasury, through the Department of Transport, on which it appears on its books, and then delegated down through to 3 accounting officers, the 3 chief executives of the General Lighthouse Authority. So in all intents and purposes, the root of the money is private, but the way that we deal with the money is public, and that's a really important point. I'm the accounting officer for Trinity House. Therefore, you can see how the procurement, the way that we deal with the money, et cetera, is as for any other public money, and that's the way to think about it. I think there is little point in getting tied up into a sort of theoretical or conceptual conversation. For this procurement, it is public money, and the Department of Transport have a really important role in this in terms of supporting us to deliver the project, but also through the approvals process as well. In terms of the question that it doesn't surprise me you ask, I'm going to defer to who wants to say that, Damien?
Oh, thank you.
How much?
Yeah, how much?
We're talking about VFM.
Yeah, indeed. So that subject can do a bit more work we're doing on should-cost modelling based, and it's very much linked to the work we're going to be doing with all of you to determine what the right price envelope, cost envelope is for this particular endeavour. Getting that right is really important. But one thing I can say is, based on experience, is that we've never, and certainly in my experience, never underbaked that ceiling. It's always been a reflection of conversations, discussions, evidence that informs that should-cost modelling, but never, ever something which is so eye-wateringly low that you would think, I can't do it for that price, I can't do it for that budget. So that I can reassure you of. And we'll be clearer about that as we go through this process, but we need to get a bit more from all of you to help us inform that should-cost modelling so that we can come up with the right budget for this particular project.
Neil, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Damien's right. We are in that development phase where we're looking at what the budget ceiling is and what that looks like, and going through the should-cost modelling, as Damien said. So that will be the approach we'll take.
And Beth, from your side.
When we have got that agreed, obviously, the estimated value will go out on the contract notices. Yeah. That's sort of the earliest point that we would put that out in a normal process. That's
the key point. So I know that doesn't get you a figure, but Beth's point's the key point in that. Thanks, Ken. Has anybody come up?
No, we haven't got any chat online yet, no.
Okay. Any other questions in the room? Thank you.
Cheers. Hello, I'm Paul Edwards from P&S Automation. Thanks for your presentation today. My experience of government tenders is that you write the tender, you send it out to people who want to bid for it, and then whoever wins it, it's then down to them what they put into the ship. And generally that'll be to maximise their profit. And you're the people who've got to live with it and maintain it for the life of the ship. With commercial ships, the owners will normally put a maker's list down, which will specify what equipment they're happy with for each different part of the ship. So they know that when the shipyard builds it, they will at least get equipment that they're happy to then run and maintain for the life of the ship. Will you be following, which of those paths will you be following?
A little from column A and a little from column B, I think. So we have to sit within certain procurement rules, as I think you were alluding to. And so that means we have to be fair and open when it comes to what we're trying to achieve here. But when it comes to a preferred supplier list, which is effectively what you're saying, that is something we're looking at the moment as to how we can best articulate that. Because there are certain things, parts of the supply chain, certain aspects of the ship that we will really want to be in a particular kind of, done in a particular kind of way. But we've got to be careful not to over-tighten the market at the same time. So there's a bit of a balance to be struck. But I take your point entirely. There is a balance to be struck around how we don't over-specify and therefore drive the price up at the same time as we don't sort of open the floodgates such that we end up with something which is far, far worse in terms of the capability that it offers because we didn't mandate certain aspects of the build. So another conversation I think it's worth having with all of you as to how we best strike that balance. Beth, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
The only thing I think I would add to that is obviously this is a very early stage for planning, and as we go through the procurement process there is a negotiation stages where we can start to sort of nail that down. By the point of the final tender, I think some of those questions would be answered around the equipment as much as we could transparently put out. So I think there'll be more known throughout the process by that final tender stage.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I can see the advantage in exactly what you're proposing. I think what you're hearing here is yes, but within the constraints of, and how we work that through. But we can definitely see the advantage in that approach, because of course one of the things that I mentioned was the willingness, and of course it's all over the government strategies, the willingness to involve SMEs in this procurement project. That's really important to us to be able to do that.
I think I'll just add more, a broader, more general point is that public sector procurement gets a bit of a bad press, I think unfairly, because I pointed out a couple of successes, albeit they were ones that Neil and I chalked up. But there's lots more of those than you might think. You just never hear about them. It's the ones that don't work out so well that get all of the headlines, get all of the newspaper coverage. So actually just be comforted that we generally do make a success of these things. It's just that we don't shout about it.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Alan Williams from Naval Solutions. I noticed that you've mentioned methanol as a fuel. Now, as the situation with future fuels is changing quite a lot, you would need extra space for methanol. How committed are you to being that as your future fuel, or is this still up for debate?
Yeah, that is a great question.
Yes, so I thought
we talk about this a lot.
Plant that knows. just sort of provoke a conversation.
Yes,
so
exactly.
no, we're not absolutely wedded to methanol. It should have been for example, there's a lot of clarity that's still waiting to come forward as to what the future looks like for new fuels. But know that we're working with Department for Transport colleagues who are doing obviously a lot of work in this area, and we're making sure that we're plugged into that as well, plugged into the teams within Lloyd's who specialise in this particular field, making sure that our requirements ultimately reflect what's achievable. Yes, there is an energy density premium to new fuels. We understand that. There will probably be that alongside space for batteries and other things. There'll probably be on the new ships a space somewhere within the depths of the ship that will be in the short term taken up by table tennis and other recreational activity while we wait for...
You played table tennis at sea, have you?
Yeah, I get your point. So that is a conversation that we need to have, and we need to think about how we best future-proof it. I think that's where we're at with this right now. How do we best future-proof the design for our new ships?
Yeah, so future-proofability and reconfigurability, absolutely key. So we're putting it up there, as Damien said, to provoke this conversation. We're building 2 ships. We ain't going to move, we're not going to move the needle, but we need to make sure that we're not regulated out of using these ships within the ship's lifestyle. So building in that reconfigurability is absolutely key. And there's something there as well around the concept of operations of the way we use these ships. We don't just want to be able to bunker them with a new fuel in Harwich. We want to be able to use them around the coast where we need to for the benefit and safety of mariners to be able to fulfill our mission. So there's a sort of infrastructure point as well as a sort of vessel point here, following it closely and looking forward to working with everybody in this room and virtually to be able to understand the risk and how we best mitigate the risk through design. But a great question.
Yes, thank you all for taking the time to host us today and for your presentations. Greatly appreciated. I'm Derek Buxton from VARD. I have a question about design. This is framed as a design and build contract, yet in the phase 3 of the process, there's no mention about design development or design reviews. So my question really is, at what level of design maturity are you expecting at contract award? Are we looking to develop designs because your requirements, your missions, and the multifunction aspects, notwithstanding the future-proofing and the future fuel readies aspect, really drive us towards somewhat of a bespoke solution? And so there is a requirement, in my view, for quite a great deal of design development. And will that be catered to in phase 2 or left to phase 3?
That's also a good question, and so it is designed to build. It is designed to build. So in one element of this is we don't want to cross that design to build threshold. But the second side of it is, do we come to the market with something, to play your question back at you, so mature that it's set, therefore reducing that time frame? But how then do we do that and not cross that threshold? Or do we come to the market with something that is where the requirement is really super clear and everybody's clear about what we're, the concept of operations and the requirement, and then let that design, run through. There's a time conversation about that. Do you want to?
Well, I was going to maybe see if Dean wanted to come in on that.
Does Dean want to come
on that question? Sorry, Dean, putting you on the spot. So Dean's from Longitude, who's our design authority. Dean.
Yeah, so I think certainly the intention is to put a reasonable amount of work in terms of a design to inform the requirements. And then there's a decision to be made about how those requirements are reflected in terms of into a contract. But ultimately, the intention, as I understand it, is that the yard will be responsible for delivering a compliant design to a set of requirements rather than building to a design that is delivered in full as part of the procurement.
Thank you. That was much better said than I tried to say it. But there was also part of the question was about where that sits in the procurement process.
Yes, so it's very much part of our expectations that there will be a period of time post-contract award where we will be in that conversation around design. So we have factored that into our timescales, that learning indeed from our colleagues in the Northern Lighthouse Board and what their work going through at the moment with the replacement to their ship, the Polestar, which is best practice in every which way. And we want to share in that. So we're working with our colleagues there to give as much of their insight into this process as possible, because they're certainly making great progress with Gondon as their yard producing the replacement for the Polestar.
And of course, from my perspective, a key part of this is once the design is set and we move out, then the variation orders, no. Yeah, unless we absolutely have to. That's for a midlife update or a midlife let's keep control of that cost as we go through that process once we've got that design. That's absolutely, I mean, obviously there'll be a contingency element to this, of course there will, but it's really sort of pushing down on that. It's a good question, isn't it? And it's something that's a very live conversation, and we recognise completely, where you're coming from on that question. Any other questions in the room? Oh, there's a couple. I'll take the one at the back first, and then Tom, I'll come to you.
Morning, Tom Kerwell, Camel Air. We were obviously involved in the previous procurement process and gave feedback on some of the contract requirements, and it was really pleasing to see that they've been fed back into the RFI we've received at this stage and felt listened to, and that rings true in what you're saying today about wanting to engage with SMEs. On a similar note though, I note that one of the slides in the heading had UK content. Is there, and if so, to what level, a requirement for UK content on this project?
Yeah, thanks Tom. Thank you for that feedback, because that's exactly where we want to be. We want to be understanding what works for you, and whether that be financial securities, the design build piece, wherever it is, what works for industry, what works. And it's really good to hear that feedback, that we've put that into the RFI, and you can see that coming out through that. In terms of UK content, I'll hand over to the procurement experts.
Yeah, I think
this is one of their favourite subjects, right?
So yeah, so I'll defer to Beth on social value and where that sits into in the mix. But in terms of that kind of broader UK content point, and that comes in all sorts of different ways. It can be through a joint venture. It can be through how the supply chain, as we pointed out through the presentations we gave today, how the supply chain will support these ships through their life, how the supply chain will form part of the construction of these new ships. There's lots of different ways you can generate UK content, sponsorship of cadets and engineers, that sort of thing. Very many different ways that can be achieved. But it's important to us because in the end, this is public money, and there is a reasonable expectation, a very reasonable expectation, that there will be a demonstrable level of UK content in what we end up with at the end of the day. And that is why we highlighted that as a consideration. So this is one of the reasons why everyone's here today, so that conversation doesn't just have to be between you and us, but also amongst all of you. Beth, if you want to add anything to the social value point.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is obviously I'm a procurement person, so my answer will always be we'll run a compliant procurement process involving obviously UK and treaty state countries as we move over to PA23. But as Damien said, there is more to it than just the procurement of the actual purchase of the vessel. We do at the moment maintain all of our vessels in the UK, so we have a dynamic purchasing system for dry docking, which we use, and although it's open to other countries, only UK dockyards have participated in that so far. Because of the change to PA23, we have to rerun that dynamic purchasing system in 2026. So that will also be open again, but we expect that UK yards will participate in that again. And as you say, with the cadets as well, there's more than just that UK content element to the social value side, but we are trying to look at that as part of the planning stage and see how else we can support.
Does that answer your question, Tom? Does that get towards it?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Another bit of great feedback.
And can I just add my thanks as well to you, Tom, and everybody for that matter, for the feedback on the RFIs. You know, that high quality feedback, as Neil has said, is invaluable to us in how we move forward from here. And it's great that you're seeing that, because we really want that to be demonstrable, that kind of feedback loop. You know, you've got to be able to see that and to know that we're listening and that we're acting on your advice and your guidance.
Thank you. Tom.
Well, actually, Tom has beaten me to my question, really. So, but you did specifically mention investing in SMEs within the discussions. Was that just sort of by dint of being in supply chain, or is there actually some views on actually, being part of the doing some investment?
Yeah, I think that's related to the earlier question about things like having a preferred supplier list and those sorts of things. But from the perspective of this kind of early stage of the procurement, convening people in this way is really key to actually making sure those relationships between the SMEs and, if you like, the prime are not forced marriages. They are something which comes together organically because of the discussions we're having in these sorts of settings. So that would be my preference, is that it naturally happens rather than us having to kind of force that together in a way that would satisfy those that would expect to see that kind of level of collaboration with SMEs.
Yeah, one of the huge advantages of building two near identical ships is the through life advantage of this. Whether you're talking about the reduction in the training bill, whether you're talking about being able to move people, manage crews more dynamically between vessels, having with the same skill sets, and whether you're talking about the supply chain. So the SME conversation, I'm keen to continue post-build through life. I think it's really important. There's a real advantage there to do that. Any other questions? Anything coming in from? Oh yes, please. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. Noel Tomlinson, BMT. Just building on some of the other questions there earlier. I mean, there's clearly a desire for these vessels to be modern, innovative, kind of future-proofed, but at the same time, availability, reliability, and delivering the capability is obviously absolutely key to what you do. I was just wondering, I mean, do you have at this stage kind of a feeling of where you are from kind of the proven commercial off-the-shelf one end of the arc through to kind of innovative, higher risk potentially solutions, and just where your kind of feeling was at this point?
Two things that guide me on that. One is overly innovative increases the cost, the barriers to entry, as I understand it from the market. And that's one of the things that we've learned from our previous procurement, where I think that we got the balance potentially over on the innovation side. And availability. This is a safety service that we deliver, and it's important that we're able to deliver that 365. So that's really important. Now, that does not mean to say, as you refer to the methanol conversation, it doesn't mean to say that we can't build in space, we can't build in the opportunities for innovation so that we can increase the longevity of these ships. We're building two. We've got to keep the cost. We've got to keep the cost down. Innovation can drive cost. So that doesn't mean to say no. It just means to say yes, we want modern, but we want proven, so that we can from day one operate these ships, because we need to fulfill a statutory requirement, and that's related to safety. I'm just looking at the team to see whether they want to. Good, excellent. That was really clear then, wasn't it? Decision made.
Thank you. Andrew Humphreys, Vectis Marine Design. Thank you very much for hosting today. It's been very interesting. Methanol has been talked about, and one of the slides refers to a 12-hour energy storage system and battery system, I'm assuming. It'd be interesting to understand a bit more about that. Obviously, that could be a major cost driver in itself, and I assume you're aiming for a hybrid of some sort. It'd be interesting to know whether you're considering plug-in or generating on board, because that has big implications. And related to all of that is whether you've thought about incentivizing within the competition reducing energy consumption on the ship, which can be achieved in a wide variety of ways, and hence reducing emissions. Your comments on that would be?
If you could hand the microphone to your right, and I'll throw to Dean on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, so on that front, I think just the context of that 12-hour requirement is that it's at anchor overnight, supporting a zero-emission mode at anchor rather than propulsion, but with an envisage that we would be making the most of that then storage capacity in other modes that the vessel uses. So yes, you would be driving yourself towards a hybrid type solution.
And incentivising energy reducing.
Sorry, if you go to the mic so people can hear the conversation online.
And whether it's feasible, or have you thought about incentivising reducing the energy consumption as part of the evaluation process for the technical proposal and the cost proposal?
I personally haven't, but that's not to say that's not a consideration that Andy's had as well, so we will take that away.
Thank you very much.
Anything coming through online?
What I would say is that as part of that criteria we set in there, will hopefully give you in draft form so you can understand the key areas, and that may come part of it, but please do comment, as we've said in that draft form, send it back to us.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Are there any questions coming through online?
So we've got two, I'll read them out. They are similar to what I've been asked in the room, but I'll read them out just in case we want to touch on them. First question, noting the age of the vessels, what innovative solutions and technologies do you propose or request to ensure the long-term supportability and through life support of the replacement ships to ensure availability, particularly in terms of predictive condition-based maintenance, remote diagnostics, and environmentally sustainable practices?
Well, yes, is the answer to that. Yes, all of that. I mean, that's exactly the point, isn't it, when we start getting into the detail of what makes these ships more efficient and more, less impact on the environment. Exactly those sort of areas which we've seen introduced more broadly across the shipping sector. Are those innovative, or those are actually being rolled out? I think in a large part they're already in the process of being rolled out over the timeline that we'll be building those ships. What was the? And there's another.
And second question, thank you for the presentations. Is THV considering, is Trinity House considering engaging a designer to provide conceptual or basic design for the bidders for an easier tender bidding and evaluating process? I think we've already answered that question.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you.
I mean, just on the point about, predictive maintenance, for example, is one of those things that I'm guessing in the commercial space is being done all the time now. It's kind of convention. I think it's worth thinking about what we're asking for in that kind of commercial context, because actually there are lots of similarities around the imperative. We're not trying to maintain in explicit terms of these ships a healthy bottom line, but the pressures are very similar. We have to deliver on our statutory duties. We do have to deliver on commercial income. So that reliability and that availability is as important to us as it would be to any commercial ship owner in the private sector, albeit for different reasons. The pressures are the same.
Thank you. Any other questions from
and just if we could prompt online as well, if there are any questions coming through.
Yep. I knew if I stopped for long enough, someone would put their hand up, yeah.
I'll be that person then. I'm James Wickenden, I'm from BMT. You've spoken about cost, you've spoken about innovation, and the need to keep it, particularly cost down and innovation up. Are you looking with this at collaborative efforts amongst who you select going forward? And that being so, are you canvassing who's attended today and sort of distributing the list out so that people have a visibility of who's part of this process?
Yes, that's the plan. So we want everyone to be able to know, not necessarily by name, but know by company who's been present. So that, because you lose the kind of value to these sorts of sessions where we're trying to convene. Yes, what we're doing is setting the direction of travel. That's important. But we're also introducing people to one another who may not have had the opportunity to do that before. and as well as getting that feedback. So there's kind of a multifaceted set of reasons as to why this sort of event is really important.
Great, thank you. Lovely, okay, thank you very much. Any more? You had to work on another question.
I did, yeah.
We've got another question in the end.
Oh, we've got another question. Okay, let's it'll be about people.
Do you have some ideas about what you expect from digital monitoring of the vessel at sea and on shore?
You know, so I don't think that's, I mean, the answer is yes. What ideas would we have? I mean, we're constantly, I mean, I've worked on vessels where that is exactly what is happening. Digital monitoring ashore, back to the OEM. In fact, that's increased over time to the frustration of, you know, some of the engineers that I've worked with. I think that is part of, it's tied into what Damien was saying over predictive maintenance. It's about where the expertise lies. It's about the sort of kit that we're going to have on the ship. It's just it's sort of just become I think a fact of life. And I was talking in broader terms about Trinity House and digitalization and all the rest of it as far as our aids to navigation and that remote monitoring. I think that is all part of that. That comes down to the way we, you know, efficiently run modern ships today, and it's one of the things which isn't the way that, I mean, that's not the way that we run Patricia, but it is the way that we would run a modern ship, because the equipment that we will deploy on those ships require that ability to remotely monitor and then have reach back into the OEM. I'm very conscious that people in this room will have more expertise on that particular subject, but in broad terms, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I mean, from where Neil and I come from, which is largely on the aerospace side, that's a very common practice. That usage monitoring is really key to the overall pounds and shillings that we spend on maintaining our very expensive assets. So we would expect no less from the new ships that we're building.
Yeah, indeed. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's a leading question on from that. I mean, this is quite common these days in data monitoring, so that we can fix the ships and maintain them when they come alongside. So is operational readiness or integrated logistics support the sort of thing that you'll be contracting at the same time as the procurement of the build? Because, I mean, there's an efficiency there in doing so, and, you know, what sort of time period would you be looking to contract out the maintenance and support of the vessels?
The answer to that question is potentially. So noting the conversations that we're going through with the Department of Transport, what you've just identified there is one of the advantages of a two-ship build to a similar design. And then one of the areas which we're fleshing out is the VFM through life, so that we're not narrowly looking at this as a sort of, you know, the CapEx build. Let's have a look at the advantages through life and then cost that through. It's a bit of a way of saying yes, absolutely. I can see the advantages in that. And then your question is, would we procure it? Well, then we might, because of the advantages.
So that leads me on to, I mean, is your procurement policy mature enough to look at operating expenditure through life as well as capital expenditure?
Yes, I think it's fair to say, and I'll defer to Beth, but under the new Procurement Act, you know, there's more flexibility built into what we're able to achieve and what we're able to do, and from a procurement design perspective, I think that's entirely achievable.
Yeah, for PA23, we can design our own procurement process, our own evaluation, and the longevity of it. When it comes to the new dynamic purchasing systems that we're hoping to move to in more areas than we have at the moment, the beauty of a dynamic purchasing system is that it's much longer term than a general framework agreement. New yards can join and leave, and any other dynamic purchasing systems that we can put out, suppliers can leave, they can join in partway through, so we don't end up with a sort of relatively short-term contract, 4 to 6 years, that after that we don't really know what direction to go in. We've got a much longer future to that procurement.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else coming through from in line? No. Anything else in the room? Thanks, team. You go that way, and I'll go that way and close everything out. Thanks panel, and thanks everyone for questions coming in from online. And as I said, we'll be publishing the Q&A we received today. We'll give full written answers to everything you've heard, and that will continue through the process, and we'll look to do that on a weekly basis. We'll also keep in touch with you all about future engagement events, including our procurement boot camp, which I don't know if I've enrolled on that yet. Remember our 3 objectives: transparency, collaboration, and clarity, and we're taking all of those seriously. And can I again thank all of our panelists, our 2 cadets who have taken the time today to be here and give their important perspective about this programme. I hope you found that enlightening and useful. I'd like to thank our colleagues from SMI and Braemar, and of course Longitude, who probably got more than he bargained for when he turned up. But thank you for your support, and to the home team, Antonella and Zoe here at Trinity House, for their organisation. There's an awful lot of effort that goes into running an event like this. And Alex and the team, there he is at the back, Alex and the team from Equip, absolutely superb, really professional job. Thank you. And I'd like to end by thanking somebody who can't be here today, Liz Wilkinson, known to us as Liz, a friend and colleague to us all here at Trinity House, died very suddenly just 2 weeks ago. Elizabeth was the Futures Afloat procurement lead and was ultimately the reason why we're all here today. Elizabeth was known best for the longest by Damien and by Neil, but she had colleagues and friends right across the UK maritime sector, particularly in the Maritime Coast Guard Agency. So I want to dedicate this event to Elizabeth's memory, and we have sent and we've written to her husband Paul and to her family, and we will send on condolences and to her family and friends. So thank you all for being here today, in person and online. This is a hugely exciting project from our perspective, as we look to the future for the benefit and safety of all mariners. I look forward to the conversations and the engagement that we're all going to have together as we move this this project forward to build new ships, new vessels for Trinity House. And I very much look forward, I don't think I'm looking forward to the boot camp so much, but I am looking forward to our next engagement event. Thank you.